Good evening, and welcome to Story Hour. I'm Laura Blackwell, tonight's host, calling you from an internet connection that is helpfully telling me it's unstable. So if I start to cut out, please feel free to just hold up a hand to your ear and we'll figure something out. Maybe I'll take my video offline. So my co-host, Daniel Marcus, started Story Hour just about a year ago to help people stay connected in one of the oldest ways known to our species, which is just telling each other stories around fire. Welcome back to those of you who've been at our campfire before, and welcome to those of you joining us for the first time. As always, we have two writers reading for their favorite nonprofits. Tonight's readers are Nancy Jane Moore and Austin Shirey. If you are fortunate enough to help others during this time, please consider a donation to one or both of tonight's featured nonprofits, Empowerment Self-Defense Global and Black Lives Matter. Nancy Jane Moore is reading for Empowerment Self-Defense Global. ESD Global is a US-based nonprofit organization that envisions a world where people can live safe, violence-free lives. Established in 2017, ESD Global is dedicated to making empowerment self-defense, ESD, accessible around the world through increasing public awareness of its profound benefits, providing instructor trainings to leaders who teach ESD in their communities, supporting research, and providing program grants. Their mission is to establish empowerment self-defense as a key primary violence prevention strategy for women and vulnerable populations. You can learn more at esdglobalselfdefense.org. Austin Shirey is reading for Black Lives Matter. Black Lives Matter Global Network Foundation is a global organization in the US, UK, and Canada, whose mission is to eradicate white supremacy and build local power to intervene in violence inflicted on Black communities by the state and vigilantes. By combating and countering acts of violence, creating space for Black imagination and innovation, and centering Black joy, BLM is winning immediate improvements in all our lives. You can learn more at blacklivesmatter.com, and I've dropped the donation link as well. If you're here on Zoom, feel free to leave your camera on. It can be nice for our readers to see you. Chime in on the text if you like. And if you're joining us on Facebook, thank you, but we're not seeing your messages right away, so sorry about that. Our first reader tonight is Nancy Jane Moore. Nancy Jane Moore is the author of Locus recommended science fiction novel, The Weave, and the forthcoming fantasy novel, For the Good of the Realm, both published by Seattle's Aqueduct Press. Her other books include the novella Changeling and the collection Conscientious Inconsistencies. Her short fiction has appeared in a number of anthologies and in magazines ranging from Lady Churchill's Rosebud Wristlet to the National Law Journal. I didn't realize National Law Journal published fiction. Maybe I shouldn't be surprised. In addition to writing, she holds a 4th degree black belt in Aikido and teaches empowerment self-defense. A native Texan who spent many years in Washington, D.C., she now lives in Oakland, California with her sweetheart, 2 cats, and an ever-growing murder of crows. Nancy, welcome.
Oh, I'm so glad to be here. And the National Law Journal once held a fiction contest and I won it. And that's how I got my fiction published there. So I don't think they do it regularly, but so I'm going to read 2 short pieces. They're both near future, and I think they're hopeful. The first one I'm going to read is called Thank God for the Road, and it appears in this book that just came out, Black Eyed Peas on New Year's Day, an anthology of hope, edited by Shannon Page. And so I think it's hopeful. I hope you will too. It's also the story, the reason I live in California is my sweetheart read the story when it was first published, and he wrote me a fan letter and I wrote back, and one thing led to another. So this story is close to my heart, and I'll get started. Is my feed breaking up? Wait a minute. Okay, so I'm good. Okay. So thank God for the road. We planned to make Flagstaff by nightfall, but an hour outside Gallup, one of the solar panels on the bus roof started to flap around. Emily and Joe climbed up to check and discovered several more loose panels. It was too hot to sit inside while they fixed it, so the rest of us put up sunshades and rested by the road. Not a cloud in the sky, nothing but cactus in any direction, so hot and dry that every time you took a deep breath, moisture dried up all the way down into your lungs. I sat with Irene, who was teaching me another story. Irene's our oldest member, over 60 now, but crowds grow real quiet when Irene tells a story. I'm the youngest by a good 10 years. I turn 20 next month, and I'm a guitar picker, not a storyteller. But Irene wants me to learn to tell. It didn't take me long after I joined All-Star Traveling Review to figure out no one ever says no to Irene. It rained for days and days, I said, sing-song. You have to put more feeling into it, Irene said. You have to make people know what it feels like when the roof is leaking, and every time you run outside, you get soaked to the bone, and you can't imagine ever being dry again. I'd like to feel like that. No, you wouldn't. But Irene knew what I meant. I'd never seen that kind of rain. The places I know get a little drizzle and everybody's grateful. There are parts of the country where they get too much rain instead of too little, but we never go there. They don't get enough sun to power the bus. You've got to make the audience feel wet when you tell that story. You've got to make them shiver, even if it's 97 degrees and hadn't rained in 17 months. So I thought back to a time in Austin when they'd had a little rain and we went swimming in Barton Springs. The water was icy cold. It's the only time I remember being wet all over. They didn't think they'd ever be dry again. I shivered. It's more like it. We got back on the road in early afternoon. We could stop in the Painted Desert, someone said. Yeah, I said, I've never been there. Not enough people there to do a show, Joe said. She was driving. We'll go as long as there's sun. That way we'll make flag tomorrow. Sun powers the bus's generator directly. We've got batteries that run a stove, a computer, a few amps, but we haven't got one big enough to run the bus. We don't drive after dark. I sat up in the front, staring out at the expanse of concrete. The road is crumbling, helped along by cactus and other plants too tough for even drought to kill or cement to stop. An obstacle course. No one ever stays in one lane. It's desolate here, but not the desperate desolation you get driving east from Denver across the Great Plains. It's not as flat, and things here are the way they're meant to be. The plains weren't supposed to turn into desert, but this place has been bone dry for 1,000 years. The first vehicle we'd seen all day came along about an hour before sunset. Joe was struggling to see in the setting sun. I cupped my hand over my eyes and moved to get a better angle. Looks like a car. We stopped, common courtesy, though we all checked to make sure we had weapons handy. We're friendly, but we're not fools. The car held 2 grown women with 3 little kids in the back seat. Boxes and suitcases were tied onto everything but the solar panels. The women got out, the kids stayed in the car. Joe and Irene got off the bus. I tagged along behind. Where are you heading? Joe asked. Central Texas. We hear there's work. Heard anything? We haven't been there since spring, Joe said. It was November. But they had rain. Might be work. You musicians? Musicians, actors, storytellers. They're a living in that? So long as we travel. Every place needs entertainment. Irene was making friends with the kids, telling a funny story. I heard giggling. Joe said, what do you hear from out west? Things got pretty bad after that last earthquake in LA. Lots of refugees heading everywhere else in California. Jobs dried up. Along with everything else, the second woman put in. Things seemed better in Arizona. They said in Flag there was snow in the Grand Canyon. Never seen snow. Oh, Joe, can we go see it? Maybe. Snow is water. We almost stayed in Flag. The water wasn't too pricey and there was work, but we got family in Texas. Joe nodded. Be careful in New Mexico. They haven't had much rain. But Randy yelled up to the bus window. Someone threw down a bag. She took out a couple of rag dolls in a little box and gave them to the kids. They squealed, delighted. Joe frowned. We sell those toys, but no one tells Randy no. The car went on east. We drove 30 miles and pitched camp near some Anasazi ruins. Funny to think, Emily said over dinner, that highway used to carry thousands of cars at a time. Now we travel all day and only see one other vehicle. Thousands of people, that's crazy. There's not that many cars anywhere. Look how big it is. Had to be a lot of cars once. Emily's right, Randy said. Used to be everybody had a car. Everybody drove this highway. But Randy remembers. But oil got pricey and water got pricier. None of the car makers adapted till too late. That's why the only vehicles left are mishmashes like ours. Here's the funny thing, though. People have been traveling this pathway for a long time, probably back before the Navajo and the Hopi lived around here. It's a natural path. But this big highway didn't get built until the 1960s. And it's been falling apart pretty much my whole life. I doubt it's had any repair in 50 years. This huge highway was a good road for 90 years, maybe less. I was surprised. If you look at a big road, you think it must have been there for all time. My daddy used to tell a story. It seems when his grandpa was a little kid, 5 years old, his parents moved from Texas to California. Was that the Dust Bowl? No, earlier than that, when times were flush, 1923, 24. They drove on this very road, except it wasn't even paved back then, much less wide and divided. They met another car on the road. The folks in it had been in California and were headed back to Texas. Just like us, they stopped and chatted. Nobody else coming. It didn't matter that they blocked the road, just like now. They were driving one of the first cars ordinary people could buy, a Model T Ford. The future looked bright. With cars, people could go anywhere, live everywhere. Nothing was too far away anymore. So people built these highways and the cities grew to supersize. But when the rain stopped falling, the cities died. Another 100 years, this highway will be gone. Though there's probably some kind of road. There'll be some kind of road. Your kids, she pointed at me, might even be driving down it. Our grandparents and their grandparents built a major civilization around the automobile, and it lasted 125 years. We all got quiet. Even I know 125 years isn't long, not for civilizations. Finally, I said, so what do we do about it? And Annie smiled. A big smile, the largest I'd seen in some time. Well, we start over, child. We try again. It's going to be harder because we haven't got the resources to be careless this time. You have to pay real attention to build something that'll last longer than 125 years. That's why we're out here telling stories and singing songs, letting everyone know there's more to life than just surviving. That's our job. She paused. Getting the rebuilding started, that's your job. She hooked me then and there. Youth always knows it can do something better than those who came before. Besides, you don't say no to Shirey. Now, 50 years later, I'm not so arrogant. I know I failed more than I succeeded. But the road's still here. Just 2 lanes of concrete now. We jackhammered out the rest. Let the land take it back. The group in New Mexico sent some old spaceships up to bring spent comets down for water. It's expensive, makes gold look cheap, but it made the Southwest livable again. Nobody wastes it, not this time around. We at least learned that much. The Southwest is still desert and it's still hot, but people are making lives here again instead of just passing through or withering away. The road is too busy for people to stop and chat in the middle of it, but not so busy that people don't pull off to the side and visit. You can't have civilization without a road, but you can't let the road take over all of civilization. That's what we aimed for when we rebuilt it. I think Irene would approve. So the road in question, by the way, is Interstate 40, once Route 66. I'd love to drive, but I still kind of worry about that. This other story, and I assume we're still doing okay on time? Okay. This one appeared on a website called Uneven Earth. They have a series called Not Afraid of the Ruins, and they're bringing out an anthology sometime later this year. They told me they were doing it, and I haven't heard another word, so I don't know when. But this is called The Founding of New Crockett, Texas, and it's probably set a little earlier than the previous story. Evacuating early was the smartest thing she'd ever done, Dora Castillo thought as she stared at the ruins of her apartment. They'd left Pearland 2 weeks back, 12 hours before Galveston ordered mandatory evacuations, and a day and a half before Houston tried to put in place staggered ones. I-45 had been slow as hell when she left, but it hadn't been close to the 24-hour gridlock that happened when everybody else tried to leave at once. Her friends told her she was crazy. Never gets that bad here, one said. That person ended up leaving in a boat. Hurricane Elmer had blown all the other record storms, 4 new records in the 20 years since Harvey, off the map. Most of Houston and everything between the city and the Gulf had ended up underwater. Coming back wouldn't make the list of smart things, though of course she'd had to do it, had to see if anything had made it through, even though she'd heard floodwaters had risen to the level of second-floor apartments. If they'd stayed, they'd have been lucky to get out at all, and the truck would have been ruined. She had the truck and the kids and her tools and all the important papers and some clothes and food. No insurance on the apartment. Tenant insurance cost too much, and it didn't cover flooding anyway. No point in making a claim with FEMA. Word was the federal government was tapped out. The state wasn't even contributing to cleanup. There was so little money for relief and rebuilding that there wasn't work for carpenters. Getting some work was the other reason Dora had left her kids with a friend in Plano and come back down. Instead of landing a job, she'd done volunteer work alongside everyone else. The trip hadn't even yielded enough money to pay her friend for watching the kids. She took one last look at the wrecked building, decided there wasn't any point in trying to pull anything out of it, and headed north on I-45. The truck had been another good decision. It had cost an arm and a leg, but the solar panels for charging in spots with no electricity and the locked tool chest under the camper cap had made it worth it. She'd scrimped on other things to pay it off and keep it in good shape. When she called her folks to let them know she was safe, they told her to join them in Mexico. But there wasn't work in Mexico. And besides, she wasn't a Mexican citizen. Her folks had dual citizenship and US Social Security checks. She needed a job. The traffic this trip wasn't as bad as it had been the day they evacuated. She passed the exit for State Highway 19, the back road she'd taken to get out of 5-mile-an-hour traffic that day. Traveling that road had led them to the Davy Crockett National Forest. That had been another good decision. It had been late afternoon when her daughter Tencia had spotted a weathered sign for the park that included the word camping. She decided it might be a good idea to stop for the night. They'd taken one back road and then another before finally coming across a campground just as the sun began to disappear. At the entrance, they saw an old RV, a weather-beaten sign saying host in front of it. Dora had figured there must be some check-in process, so she knocked on the door. A man who looked old enough to be her grandfather, silver hair curling above his dark brown face, had answered. Nah, there's no check-in these days. Ain't seen any Forest Service folks in 2 years. Just pick any open spot you like. Y'all trying to get away from that hurricane? She nodded. The Rangers didn't bother to cut nothing off when they pulled out, Frank told her. But the electricity in the latrines and charging stations is kind of wonky, and there's some leaks in the roof and pipes. He nodded toward the truck. You do some of that kind of work? The first day she cleaned off some of the solar panels, patched some bad spots on the latrine roof, put some gaskets and faucets to stop the leaks. Then the rain came and everyone holed up under anything they could to wait it out. The hurricane had turned east, aiming for eastern Louisiana and maybe back down to New Orleans, so they didn't get the brunt of it. This and the worst of the storm was cause for celebration. A couple of older women who lived in a old pickup camper on the edge of the site were growing vegetables. They contributed some tomatoes and squash. The old man who was looking after his grandkids disappeared off in the woods and came back with a rabbit and some squirrels ready for the barbecue. Frank fired up a grill. Dora spent another day doing some more repairs, making sure her truck had a full charge before she headed on to Plano. Frank had been sorry to see her go. It was kind of hard hoping you'd decide to settle in here. Nice having more kids around and someone who knows how to fix stuff. Dora laughed and said she was a city girl. I'll save you a space just in case, he said. Imagine we're going to get a few more refugees up here. The kids had cried when they said she said they were leaving, and Tinsia sulked all the way to Plano. It had been crowded at her friend's house. Another reason she'd gone back down to Houston to check out the apartment and the work options. She knew she'd have to find someplace else to go as soon as they got back. But where was she going to go? She looked around Plano, but the 62 depression had crippled the Dallas region worse than the Gulf Coast. Nothing to be had anywhere for a carpenter but odd jobs and cheap repair work. Nobody was building anything new. Dora drove past the exit for 19 on into Huntsville. A few miles down the road, she saw the exit for another road, one that crossed 19. She'd had a late start and it was almost dark now. She might as well camp out, finish the drive to Plano tomorrow. The kids would be okay one more day. Where was she going to take them anyway? No home to go back to, no work. She got off the freeway, meandered around the back roads until she got to the campground and spotted Frank's camper. Here. She was going to bring them here. She'd build them a treehouse in one of the big oaks. They could do school online with their tablets. No one had turned the Wi-Fi off and the Forest Service abandoned the place. She could get odd jobs in Lufkin or Nacogdoches, maybe. They would learn to gather nuts, hunt some game, maybe grow vegetables. Not forever, Dora told herself, just for now. So that's it. And thank you all so much for listening. It's fun to share these stories.
I really like the sense of resourcefulness to them. You said that they're hopeful, and I think that that is because the people in them are resourceful.
Well, that's what I keep trying to think about in the future, because between the fires we've had here in the Bay Area and the hurricanes down in the Gulf, and I'm from the Houston area, there's going to be some kind of muddled mess, and what we're going to have to do is figure out how to work with it. And that seems to me what will get us through into the the next period of time.
Agreed. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. That was great.
Just going to take a minute to let those stories finish soaking in. Then take a breath and move on to the next. Oh, I should mention though, Nancy, that it was coming up in the chat that people liked this setting and would like to see more, like maybe a novel.
Okay.
Just think about it.
I've got a longer story but it is not actually set in those places. It's set in California, but it's a sort of the same time period.
I like it. Well, our next reader tonight is Austin Shirey. Austin Shirey has been telling stories ever since he read The Hobbit as a kid. If he's not writing, he's probably reading or enjoying time with his wife, their daughters, and their 2 cats in Northern Virginia. His fiction has been featured in Orca, a literary journal, All World's Wayfarer Literary Magazine, Stone Coast Review, and Blind Corner Literary Magazine. He has fiction forthcoming in the Weird Fiction Anthology from Black Hair Press and the Midnight Shadows and With Bone and Iron anthologies from Erie River Publishing. You can find him online at his website, austinshirey.com, or on Twitter at TAShirey87. But tonight, you can find him right here on Story Hour because he's about to read us a story. Austin, welcome.
Hey, thanks for having me. Really excited to be here.
It's our pleasure.
So I'll be reading a story that was published in Stone Coast Review last August, I believe. So this story is called Magus. It's a crisp October afternoon in London, and a murmuring crowd is already flocking around the crime scene. There's a familiar fat constable manning the yellow line. I fumble for his name as I approach. Murder on Halloween, I say, extending a hand. Bit cliche, isn't it, Constable Walsh? His cherubic face brightens and he shakes my hand. Quite right, Detective Inspector Northerby. Quite right. He nods to my partner, Detective Inspector Harris. Constable, Harris says, nodding back. He's terrible at remembering names. Scene of crime officers here, I ask. Yes, sir, Walsh says. Good. Harris and I swish under the yellow cordon and make our way into the shop. Bella's tea room is bright and colorful. Lots of flowers, lots of fancy paintings and gilded frames. Lots of pink. Looks like a little girl's idea of what a tea room should look like. Not my little girl, though. Rosie likes Star Wars and Abbott and Costello Meet the Mummy, ray guns and monsters. The smell hits me and I'm glad I haven't had lunch. Strong, sour smell, like a mix of smoke, nuke steaked, bad eggs. I hear Harris gag and turn to see him running for the door. The scene of crime officers direct me to a table where the smell is strongest. Several other SOCOs are dusting for prints, taking pictures, bagging evidence. A crumpled pile of powdered ash sits on a black and blistered wicker chair. Nothing else is burnt. Detective Inspector, a SOCO says, handing me a mask and a pair of gloves. Her cool blue eyes look at me expectantly over the mask covering her own mouth and nose. Thanks. I bend down, examining the chair. Cause of death? Immolation, we think. No trace of accelerants, though. That's strange. We ID'd the Vic? Yes, sir. Eyewitnesses say Alan Morgenstern. I stand and look at her. The bloke who writes the Milton Blake books? She nods and holds up a clear baggie filled with several blackened teeth. Dental will likely confirm the reports. Damn, my little girl loves those books. I clear my throat. These witnesses, they ready to talk? Think so, sir. Let's get them down to HQ. Smells terrible in here. Interview room 5A is more of a broom closet. Unlike everything else here at Metropolitan Police Headquarters in Bishopsgate, it's plain and worn down. Scuffed up checkerboard linoleum floor, scuffed up steel table, scuffed up stack of black plastic chairs looming in a corner. Harris and I grab 2 chairs and place ourselves across the table from the witness. This guy looks like a werewolf from some 70s B movie. He's got a dark brown shag haircut, a cocaine addict's beard, and a lazy eye going sideways behind a pair of thick glasses. Shit, man, he says, in an undeniably American accent. I can't. This is just, sorry, Harris asks. It's like I write horror stories professional, right? This, it's like something I'd write, but it happened in real life, right in front of me. I hold up a hand. Let's start from the beginning, shall we? I'm Detective Inspector Northerby, and this is my partner, Detective Inspector Mark Harris. State your name for the record, please. The American takes a deep breath. Right, yeah, sorry, Stanley Price. Where are you from, Mr. Price? Maine, mostly. Florida when Maine gets too cold. What brings you to London? Just visiting for a bit. Next book is set here and nothing beats hands-on research. Even a ride along, yeah, I even have a ride along with one of you bobbies. We're detective inspectors, Harris interjects. Big difference, Stan. If I'm the consummate professional in this partnership, then Harris is the loose cannon. At least he thinks so. I think he's been watching too much television. Price blanches. Oh, sorry, Detective Inspector, right. God, don't I feel like an asshole? It's all right, Mr. Price, I say. Now, how did you know Alan Morgenstern? My publisher handles the American editions of his Milton Blake books. How long have you known him? Bunch of year now, give or take. He came across the pond for a book tour after Milton Blake and the Emerald Elemental came out in the States back in '05. Talk about a massive hit, man. Bestsellers, sure, Harris agrees. Not just bestsellers, Price says. Those books are magic, man. Pure magic. Everyone just devoured them. I wish I'd thought of them. Interesting. Were you jealous of Mr. Morgenstern's success? Price stiffens, his not lazy eyes shooting nervously back and forth between me and Harris like a billiards ball hitting every edge of the table. What? No way, man. I was happy for him. Look, I'm good. I've got enough money and fame. I've got enough, man. I just meant that I loved his stories, and it breaks my heart realizing there's never going to be another one. Alan had a gift. That's all, really. Just something we have to ask, Mr. Price. No need to get worked up. Now, were you sitting at the table with Mr. Morgenstern in Bella's tea room today, a little before noon? Yeah, our writing group meets there every Thursday. Me, Alan, Janet, and Greg. Did you actually see Mr. Morgenstern catch fire? Okay, he didn't just catch fire. Someone set him on fire. I sit up a little straighter. You're saying another person set Mr. Morgenstern on fire, deliberately, Harris adds. Yeah, deliberately set Alan on fire, Price says. That's what I'm saying. Did you see who set Mr. Morgenstern on fire? I asked. Yeah, man, and this is where shit gets strange. One of Harris's fuzzy caterpillar eyebrows rises to the heavens. How so? Price leans in conspiratorially, overlooking the cocaine cowboy. I swear on the Bible, cross my mama's heart, Jesus rest her soul, this is all true. You can ask the others too. Janet and Greg, they'll say the same thing. Typical writer drawing out the suspense. What did you see, Mr. Price? This guy, he just appeared, okay? Like right in front of our table. No fanfare, no nothing. He smiled, and I mean like an evil fucking smile, man. Snapped his fingers and Price makes an explosive motion with his hands. Harris snorts. That's your official statement. A stranger appeared at your table, snapped his fingers, and set Alan Morgenstern on fire. God, look, I know this sounds crazy, man, but you got it. Yes or no, Mr. Price? Is that your official statement on Mr. Morgenstern's death? Yes, it's my goddamn official statement, okay? Harris whistles. Mr. Price, can you remember what this man looked like? Price lights up like Big Ben at night. Oh, hell yeah, I remember. Average height, short blonde hair, wore a ratty trench coat and a wrinkled navy-colored business suit. Dark tie, white button-up shirt. He wore glasses, had a scar running down from one of his eyes. It was a jagged scar, almost like a lightning bolt or something. He was smoking a cigarette too. The variation of remembered details, some specific, some vague, means certain things stuck out to him more than others, which means he's not lying. Did you see this man leave after Mr. Morgenstern caught on fire? Nope, he was just gone, like Batman gone, nowhere in sight. Could you describe the man to a sketch artist? Sure, yeah, no problem. Harris and I opened the door to room 7B to find a graying redhead crying into a handful of tissues. You sure you're ready to answer some questions now? I asked, not taking my chair. To my surprise, Harris shows some semblance of compassion. We can come back if... The matronly woman shakes her head. She looks like she belongs behind the front desk of the library. No, I'm fine. Really, I can do this. If you're sure, Harris says. The woman nods. Harris and I take our seats. Please state your name for the record, I say. Janet Sinclair. The woman sniffles and dabs her nose. You're an author? Harris asks. Sinclair nods. Yes, I write young adult fiction. I'm the author of the Larry Claymore Boy Witch series. And you're a natural-born British citizen, I asked. Yes, born and raised here in London. I understand you're part of a writing group that frequents Bella's tea room. Did you see Mr. Morgenstern catch fire there earlier today? Sinclair nods and her eyes begin welling. She blows into her tissues. And do you believe Mr. Morgenstern was set on fire by another person? Yes, sir, I'm sure of it. I saw the man who did it. Harris leans in. Did you get a good look at him? Enough to describe him? Yes, sir. I got a very good look at him. He was blonde and wearing a trench coat over a dirty suit. He had Coke bottle glasses. He was smoking. He looked like he was maybe 30 or 40 years old. I saw the brand of cigarettes. His pack was peeking out of the pocket near one of his lapels. He was smoking silk cuts. She's not lying either. That's very helpful. Thank you. So this man in the trench coat appears, and what? The man appeared next to the table, and the next thing I know, Alan's on fire. The screams. Did you see the man leave? Harris asks. No, sir. But I focused on Alan at that point. Had Mr. Morgenstern been acting strange recently? I ask. Oh my, Sinclair says, smiling warmly. Everything was strange about Alan, detectives. He's always been eccentric. How so? Harris asks. Well, he claimed he was a practicing magician. Like a stage magician? She shakes her head. No, sir. Like an Aleister Crowley magician? Like magic with a K on the end of it? He's fascinated by the occult. Harris is speechless. I'm not far behind him. Was Mr. Morgenstern acting strange at all today? Sinclair is quiet, actively recalling something. Well, she says, yes, he was. But it really began around 3 weeks ago, I guess. Alan had started looking, I don't know, sickly, big bags under his eyes. He seemed more scatterbrained than usual. Frazzled would be the best way to say it, and he was never frazzled. There was always a method to his madness, you know. We had tea 3 weeks ago. He started going on about running into the Magus at the record shop. Magus, Harris asks. Does Magus have a name? Alan never said. He just kept saying him or the Magus, like we would know who he was talking about. Alan said this Magus looked like he'd walked right off the page, something like that. Said he came right up to Alan in the record shop and started talking. Which record shop would that be? I asked. Wax Room East, I think. That's the closest to Alan's flat. He liked to walk everywhere most of the time. Did Mr. Morgenstern ever say what the Magus said to him? I'm not sure, Sinclair says. Whatever it was, it really got to Alan. Scared him bad. When Harris and I walk into room 6A, we find a squat, white-haired goblin wearing a tweed jacket and spectacles. The goblin's name is Gregory John Joyce, author of the best-selling War of Kings fantasy series. Harris loves them. Personally, I think they're pornographic drivel, clearly the work of an older man playing Dungeons and Dragons with himself. But I was raised on Tolkien and Lewis and Peake, so what the hell do I know? Joyce's interview goes pretty much the same way the other interviews have gone until he throws a spanner in the works. Wait, Harris says, holding up a hand and shaking his head. What? I said, Joyce blusters. The stranger showed up out of nowhere, snapped his fingers, and did something to upset the candle in the middle of our table. The candle ended up in Morgie's lap. A candle, I asked. Yes, every table in Bella's has one. I make a note that we'll need to confirm Joyce's statement about the candles. Never heard of a candle burning a man up like this, Harris says. My thoughts exactly. Joyce gets a smug look on his face, like he's figured something out we haven't. Yes, but you see, Morgie, he practices that ridiculous shite he insists on calling magic, always mucking about with spells and potions and strange chemicals. Perhaps he had something on his clothes or skin that caused him to combust when the candle caught him. Seems you've thought quite a bit about this, Mr. Joyce, I say. Well, of course. What else could it be? Based on what you saw, the stranger didn't snap his fingers and set Mr. Morgenstern on fire? That's preposterous. Impossible. Fantasy belongs in books. Otherwise, it's not fantasy. Wouldn't you agree? Did Mr. Morgenstern ever mention an encounter in a record store with someone he called the Magus? Harris adds. Oh, that? Joyce rolls his eyes. Morgie was very obviously tripping balls, as our dear Stan would say. He's had episodes before. The man loved his psychedelics. I see. Did Mr. Morgenstern mention anything weird at the tea room today? I asked. Joyce thinks for a moment. Well, Morgie claimed the Magus had been hounding him all last night, this morning, followed him onto the train, said the Magus wanted his life back or something like that. Mr. Morgenstern specifically mentioned encountering this Magus again today, before he died. Mushroom ravings, I'm sure of it. I think he just had an unpleasant run-in with an overzealous fan, a stalker perhaps, probably the same person that showed up at Bella's and knocked the candle into Morgie's lap. A little bell jingles as we enter Wax Room East. The place smells like cannabis. It's lit like a hospital and musty. London Calling is playing over the speakers. At least they've got good taste in tunes. There's a pimply-faced 20-something behind the counter, eyeballs deep in his phone. Oi, Harris says, rapping his knuckles on the counter. The clerk doesn't look up from his phone when he speaks. Can I help you, mate? I slide my badge across the counter while Harris yanks the clerk's phone from his hands. Yeah, you can help us, mate. Oh, sorry, sirs, the clerk stammers. Hammer tosses back his phone. Well, what's the trouble? I pocket my badge. Did Alan Morgenstern come here frequently? Who? Harris huffs loudly and reaches into his jacket, bringing out our photo of Morgenstern. The idiot's eyes light up. Oh, him? Yeah, he comes in every week. Nice chap. Every week, you say, Harris asks. The clerk nods. I motion to the ceiling. You got any CCTV up in here? Any what? Security cameras, Harris says. Does the store have security cameras? Oh, yeah, sure. There, he points to a corner behind us where the camera faces the rows of records. And there, he says, turning and pointing to a wee camera in the nook of the ceiling above him, focused on the register. Great, I say. How long do you back up your data? Probably like a month, the clerk says. The boss, he likes having the tapes to match with the loss log. You've been stealing merchandise, boyo? Harris asks, dead-eyed. The clerk shakes like a twig in a hurricane. What? No, no, sir, never. Harris harumphs. Good man, I say. I need to see about 3 weeks back. Morgenstern would have been in that day. Sure, the clerk says, back here in the office. Harris and I follow him into a raggedy old closet that desperately wishes it were an office. The clerk opens a laptop and logs in, pulling up folders with the CCTV files. He usually comes in on Wednesdays, the clerk says, clicking away at the computer. He opens a folder with the corresponding date. All right, I say, shooing him out of the seat. We'll take a look. You get back to work. Right, he says, visibly relieved he doesn't have to stick around. Takes me about 3 minutes to find what we're looking for. I double-click the video file. Alan Morgenstern strolls into the shop. He's browsing records, bopping his head along to whatever song's playing on the stereo. To the shock of absolutely no one, the clerk is behind the counter, focused on his phone. I fast forward a bit. Morgenstern takes a handful of records from the racks and wanders over to the nearby stereo system. He puts on a pair of headphones and lets the record spin. I fast forward a little more. A blond man in a trench coat approaches Morgenstern, taps him nonchalantly on the shoulder. Morgenstern turns, freaks out. He stumbles back, looking this way and that, like he can't believe what he's seeing. The man in the trench coat keeps stabbing Morgenstern's chest with a finger. From the camera's angle, I can see the man's mouth is moving. Morgenstern grows a spine, pushes the man in the trench coat away, then runs out of the store. The clerk never looks up from his phone, even as the man in the trench coat follows Morgenstern out the door. I stop the playback and take out a copy of the sketch of the man in the trench coat. I didn't get a good look of his face in the video, but what little I did see looked like it could be the guy. Damn, that's him, Harris says. I nod, pulling out my phone and ringing HQ. We'll need Sokos to come out and make a copy of the file. We walk back to the front of the store. I can't help thinking I've seen the guy in the sketch somewhere before. The clerk's back on his phone. Oi, Harris says, grabbing the sketch from me and sliding it to the clerk. Have a look here. The clerk puts his phone down and looks at the sketch. Looks familiar. I nod. Yeah, you remember seeing this guy the day Morgenstern came in a couple weeks back? Think so. Looks like he and Morgenstern got into a bit of a tizzy, I say, taking the sketch back. You remember anything they said? The clerk shakes his head. Nah, not really. Was pretty busy. Harris snorts. Right. Do you remember Morgenstern pushing the man away and running out of the store? I remember him running out and the guy following, but I don't remember no pushing. All right, thanks for the look-see. What's this all about? The clerk hollers as I open the door. Pick up tomorrow's paper, Harris says as we take our leave. It happens a little later, after Rosie falls asleep while I'm reading to her. It's our nightly ritual. She's 11, but every night since she was old enough to understand, she's had me read to her before bed. It's something my own pop did when I was her age. It's how I first discovered Tolkien. My wife, Jules, and I figured it was something worth passing on. As fate would have it, Rosie's been having me reread her the latest Milton Blake book, Milton Blake and the Devil's Gambit. This is my second time reading the book aloud to her, her third time reading it overall, and it only came out a few months back. We're on the last chapter. It's a somewhat dark book, but like I said, my girl loves ray guns and monsters. Rosie's eyes are closed and she's breathing heavily, dreaming of eldritch horrors. I'm about to set the book down and turn out the light when the cover catches my eye. Something about it. The man on the cover looks familiar. I can't quite place him though. He's dressed in a tattered trench coat with an old navy-colored suit beneath, red tie, dirty blonde hair, Coke bottle glasses, scar down his cheek. The scar kind of looks like a lightning, hell's bells. It's him. It's the man in the trench coat, the man who killed Alan Morgenstern. I ring Harris as soon as I get downstairs. Oi, John, Harris says. I hear TV in the background. Mark, got a moment? Yeah, the TV goes silent. What's going on? Do Robbie or Marlene read the Milton Blake books? I think so. Why? Grab one. Want you to see something. Okay, hang on. Make sure it's the 7th one. Milton Blake and the Devil's Gambit. Okay, Harris says, breathing a little heavier. Right, the Devil's Gambit. What exactly am I looking for, mate? We starting a book club or something? I wait a moment. Oh, bloody hell, Harris says when he sees it. The man in the trench coat, I say. The sketch, he says. The record store. It's uncanny. I can hear his mind blowing a gasket. We're quiet for several moments. You remember what Joyce said, I ask? About what? About Morgenstern's alleged stalker? He said it was probably an overzealous fan of his, something like that. So a crazy fan dresses up like Milton Blake to kill the guy who created Milton Blake. We need to start combing through online forums, fan websites, anything connected with Milton Blake fandom. Contact Morgenstern's agent and get a list of book tours. Cross-reference with the store CC footage. Chances are this creep's well known in the fan community. Damn, Harris says. Guess this means I'll have to put my pants back on. Please do. Meet you back at the office in 30. 6 days later, our desks are covered in old Chinese takeout boxes and our cheeks are dark with stubble. We've got our noses buried in reports we've read over and over and over, and we still haven't been able to locate this creep. Nothing from the myriad Milton Blake fan clubs and web forums. Nothing from what little footage we could get of Morgenstern's book tours. We did manage to get footage from the train Morgenstern took the morning before his death. As expected, the video showed another confrontation with the Milton Blake lookalike. When we questioned Morgenstern's neighbors and showed them the sketch, all they could confirm was, yeah, they had seen the man hanging about, but that was it. It's almost as if this stalker didn't exist until 4 weeks ago. Harris has voiced a growing, insistent fear that something otherworldly may be at play here. When he does, I find myself repeating Gregory John Joyce's words over and over to him like a protective mantra. Fantasy belongs in books. The alternative, well, the alternative is impossible. Something does keep nagging at me, though, something I've learned during my first years as a detective. Occam's razor, I say out loud, setting the report I've been reading back on the desk, careful not to knock over a box of day-old noodles. Huh? Harris asks, peering over the top of his own report. Occam's razor, or something like that. You remember that from Academy? Sounds familiar, Harris says, shrugging. What is it? Can't remember exactly, but I think the gist was something about the simplest answer being most likely the right answer or something. Harris puts his report on the desk and then walks over to mine. Okay, he says, arms crossed over his chest. What's the simplest answer here then? Well, either a crazy fan somehow snuck into the tea room and knocked a candle into Morgenstern's lap, which ignited whatever chemical stuff he'd gotten all over himself. Or, Harris butts in, Alan was murdered by the character he'd brought to life through black magic rituals. I stare at Harris, not wanting to answer, saying it out loud. Wait a minute, Harris says. He rushes back over to his desk, rooting through several papers. He grabs one, reads it, flicks it excitedly, and returns to my desk. No candles, he says, handing me the paper. What? There were no candles at Bella's tea room. But Joyce said he misremembered. Look at the report. I called the owner the day after. Bella's doesn't have candles on their tables. Not ever, just electronic lanterns. Bloody hell, I say, snatching the report from him. I'm only somewhat aware that our office door closes with a quiet click. Someone clears their throat. Harris and I look up. A blonde man in a tattered trench coat leans against the door. He's wearing Coke bottle glasses, and he's got a jagged lightning strike scar across his cheek. My God, I say. My blood feels thick in my veins. I'm sweating. Everything's taking on a blurred, surreal haze. Harris can't manage a word. The man takes out a pack of silk cuts and pulls out a cigarette, lights it, and puffs out a pungent cloud of smoke. He offers us a fox's smile. My senses seem sluggish. You're under arrest, I say, the words tumbling out of my mouth like rocks. Best let this whole thing go, mate, the man says. Just want to be left alone. Live what's left of me miserable life. Harris steps forward. You killed. Bastard deserved it, the man says. I warned him. Told him there'd be consequences. But he kept at it. Kept mucking about with me life. And then he goes and gives me family to the devil. My Jenny, the kids. My hands are shaking. What? The man smiles. My mind feels like it's drowning. I don't understand, Harris says. His hands are shaking too. Words, love, the Magus says through a cloud of exhaled smoke. They're magic. The Magus snaps his fingers.
I think I don't know what I enjoyed more, the meta part or the police procedural part, but I definitely was watching for clues the entire time. That was really fun.
Oh, awesome. I'm so glad you enjoyed
Watching
it.
and listening. Well, this has been another really fun hour, and I feel like we couldn't have had stories that were more different, and yet they seemed very companionable together.
This is awesome.
So that's really a neat thing. And we do this every week. So next week, we're going to be here with Laurel Ann Hill and Daniel Marcus will be reading as well. You can keep up to date about upcoming authors at storyhour2020.com, and you can see programs you may have missed, maybe watch this one a few more times on the Story Hour page on Facebook. So Nancy, Austin, thank you both so much for reading for us tonight.
Thank you so much for having us.
It's really been a delicious
And
evening.
thank you so much.
Thanks very much, folks.
It's been our pleasure. And Daniel Marcus, my co-host, our founder, thank you very much for bringing us all here. And all of you who've gathered tonight, all of you who are watching later, thank you for helping be part of Story Hour and make our campfire warm as many of us as it can. Thank you and good night.
Good night.
Night, everybody.